It is now 10 o'clock, so the meeting will begin. I'm going to ask for the Chairman, Anne Hartley, to lead informal prayers. Anne?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we gather for this September Council meeting in this worrying time, let us pray for everyone affected by COVID-19, those that are ill, recovering, lonely, frightened, and prevented from seeing their loved ones. Let us think about anyone concerned about job insecurity, housing security, and worried about their future finances. Let us hope that our younger generation can continue their education in schools, colleges, and universities successfully and are not affected too badly by this dreadful virus. Help us to support our care homes and older people wherever possible in any way we can, also our health service. Help us to lead our communities and support the people of Shropshire to the best of our abilities. Help us to support each other and our staff and officers. And most importantly, help us to listen carefully and hopefully make the right decisions. Amen.
Amen.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Council. I'm Councillor Vince Hunt, the Council Speaker. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members of the public will be able to hear the audio of the meeting and view the papers shown on the screen. This meeting is being held using remote technology, and should any committee members experience technical difficulties during the meeting, they should immediately contact the designated IT officer on the number they have already been supplied with. Everyone is requested to mute their microphone unless asked to speak. Please only use the chat function to indicate your desire to speak. Do not use it for anything else so that it is clear who is asking to speak. The debate has to be heard by those listening to the audio feed. As Speaker, I will interpret the Council's existing standing orders in light of the requirements of remote participation with advice from the monitoring officer prior to making a ruling. At the start of the meeting, I will ask members of the Council to confirm their presence and any disclosable pecuniary interest they have in any items on the agenda. I will ask everyone that speaks during the meeting, including members of the Council and officers, to introduce themselves each time before they speak. This is so that those listening know who is speaking. We will take a 10-minute adjournment every 2 hours at a suitable place in the agenda and to be repeated if required. So we will move on to the agenda. Item 1, apologies. Interim Chief Executive.
Apologies have been received from councillors Andy Boddington, Pauline D, Keith Roberts, Richard Huffer. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2, disclosable pecuniary interests. I refer members to the guidance note with their agenda papers and would remind members to disclose any pecuniary interest in any matters to be discussed which is not included in their register of interests and leave the chamber prior to the meeting being discussed. Please remember, members, you don't need to disclose anything which is already on the register. Okay, so we will read out each member in turn. I will start with Anne Hartley. You're on mute, Anne.
Present and no pecuniary interests, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Peter Nutting.
Present, no interests.
Obviously myself, no interests. Steve Charnley.
Yeah, present, no pecuniary interest.
Peter Adams.
Present, no pecuniary interests.
Roy Aldcroft.
Present, no pecuniary interests.
Claire Aspinall. Nicholas Bardsley.
Present and no pecuniary interest.
Joyce Barrow.
Present and no pecuniary interest.
Thomas Biggins.
Present and no pecuniary interests.
Ed Bird.
Present, no pecuniary interests.
Obviously, we've had apologies from Councillor Andy Boddington. Gwendolyn Burgess.
Present and no pecuniary interest.
Gwilym Butler.
Present, no pecuniary interests.
Karen Calder. Dean Carroll.
Present and no pecuniary interests.
Lee Chapman.
Present and no pecuniary interests.
Ted Clark.
Present, nothing to declare.
Gerald Dakin.
Present and no pecuniary interest.
Steve Davenport.
Present and no pecuniary interests.
Julian Dean.
Present, no pecuniary interests.
Apologies from Pauline D. David Evans. David Evans. Roger Evans.
Present, no pecuniary interests.
Hannah Fraser. Rob Gittins.
Present and no interests.
Nat Green.
Present and no pecuniary interests.
Kate Halliday.
Present and no pecuniary interests.
Simon Harris.
Present and no interests.
Nigel Hartin.
Present Speaker and no pecuniary interests.
Nick Hignett.
Present and no pecuniary interests.
Ruth Houghton.
Present and wish to declare an interest in agenda item 11 as a trustee of a supported living care provider. Thank you.
Richard Huffer. Tracy Huffer. Roger Hughes. Ian Jones.
Present, nothing to declare.
Simon Jones. Mark Jones.
Present, nothing to declare.
Heather Kidd.
Present, nothing to declare.
Christian Lee. Matt Lee. Elliot Lynch. Robert Macy.
Present, nothing to declare.
Jane Mackenzie.
Present, nothing to declare.
Chris Mellings.
Present Speaker, no interest to declare.
Paul Milner.
Present Speaker, nothing to declare.
David Minery.
Present Speaker, no pecuniary interests.
Dan Morris.
Present, no pecuniary interest.
Pamela Mosley.
Present, no pecuniary interests.
Alan Mosley.
Present, no relevant interests.
Cecilia Mockley. Peggy Mullock.
Present and no pecuniary interest.
Kevin Pardy.
Present, nothing to declare.
William Parr.
Present, no interests.
Vivian Parry.
Present, no interests.
Tony Parsons.
Present, no pecuniary interest.
Malcolm Pate. Alexander Phillips. Leslie Picton.
Present, no interests.
Ed Potter.
Present, nothing to declare.
John Price.
Present, nothing to declare.
Keith Roberts has apologies given. Madge Shinton.
Present, nothing to declare.
Robert Tyndall.
Present, nothing to declare.
Dave Tremlin.
Present, no pecuniary interest.
Kevin Turley.
Present, no pecuniary interests.
David Turner.
Thank you, Speaker. Present, no pecuniary interests.
David Vasmer.
Present, no pecuniary interests.
Claire Wilde.
Present, no pecuniary interests.
Brian Williams.
Present, no pecuniary interest.
Les Greenwood. Michael Wood.
Present, no pecuniary interest to declare.
Tina Woodward.
Present, no pecuniary interest, but item 18, I am the local member.
Paul Wynn.
Present, no interests.
Okay. I've also had a note from the Chief Executive saying that Tracy Huffer is present, but she was on mute.
Likewise, Cecilia Motley.
And likewise, Cecilia Motley.
And David Evans.
And David Evans.
Christian Lee.
Okay. Anybody else quickly?
Christian Lee.
Very good.
Interest. It looks as though Alex Phillips is trying to get in.
Well, there we go. We're going to move on. Item 3, the minutes. I move the minutes of the previous council meeting held on the 16th of July 2020, as circulated with the agenda papers, be signed as a correct record. Please only raise an item questioning the accuracy over the minutes. They cannot raise any matter or question, exploration or debate. Is that seconded?
I'll second that, Mr. Speaker.
Anybody wish to raise anything?
Oh, hi.
Sorry, who said hi? Okay. Do I need to take a vote on this, or should we just accept them?
I would accept them,
Right.
Speaker.
Well, unless anybody says otherwise, I'm going to accept these minutes as a true record. Okay, we'll move on to item 4, announcements. I think that was emailed out. I refer members to the list of official engagements carried out by the Chair and the Vice Chair since the meeting on the 16th of July, of which, because of COVID, there were none. So we'll move on to item 5, which is public questions. In accordance with Procedure Rule 14, we'll now deal with the questions from members of the public. In accordance with the new procedural rules, the Director of Legal and Democratic Services will read out the public questions received. The relevant portfolio holder will respond to the questions. There have been 5 public questions received. Claire.
Thank you, Speaker. And the first question is from Mr. Rob Wilson. He says, the footballer Marcus Rashford brought the issue of free school meals to national attention before the school summer holidays. How many children in Shropshire are currently eligible for free school meals? How has this number changed since last September? What proportion of those eligible received assistance via the COVID Summer Food Fund? Did all who sought assistance from the COVID Summer Food Fund receive it? What plans are in place to help those in need over October half term, the Christmas holiday and beyond? Thank you.
Councillor Potter.
Thank you very much, Councillor Potter here, Portfolio Holder of Children's Services. As at the 3rd of September 2020, the Council's IT system for managing free school applications shows that there were 4,883 children eligible for benefit-related free school meals at the beginning of the autumn term 2020. The comparative figure for the 3rd of September 2019 was 3,569 children eligible for benefit-related free school meals at the beginning of the autumn term 2019. The COVID Summer Food Fund provided a process for schools to order £90 vouchers for the 6-week summer holiday period for those pupils in their school eligible to receive benefit-related school meals. Orders for the vouchers had to be placed by individual schools at least 1 week before the end of the summer term. The online portal for ordering vouchers was managed by a company called Edenred UK, who had been commissioned by the Department for Education to operate the free school meal voucher scheme in England. The COVID Summer Food Fund was a specific extension to the free school meal voucher scheme schools had been using during the majority of the summer term. The council IT system shows there were 5,183 children eligible for benefit-related free school meals at the end of the summer term on the 17th of July 2020. However, as individual schools were required to submit orders for vouchers via the Edenred online portal, the council does not have access to details on the number of vouchers ordered by schools individually or in aggregate. This information would be held by Edenred UK, who were responsible for administering the voucher scheme and processing the claim for individual English schools. Edenred will hold the data on how many vouchers were issued for Shropshire pupils eligible to receive the benefit-related free school meals for the summer holiday period. as well as details on how many of these were redeemed at the supermarkets supporting the scheme and accepting the vouchers. Shropshire Council supported some of the county's most vulnerable families with food parcels over the Easter holidays and summer half-term periods. Shropshire Council officers have raised in recent meetings with West Midlands Department for Education officials whether the government intends to reinstate the voucher scheme over the autumn half-term and future school holiday periods. At the time of writing this response, no decision has yet been taken on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Question 2.
Speaker, question 2 is from Dr. Graham Tate. He says, residents of Frankwell and Porthill will welcome the report, item 10, into the proposed 20 miles per hour speed restriction.
It should be coming in.
No,
I can't hear anything.
To Shropshire Council.
I'll tell you what I can do is just turn off the other.
Who's that that's speaking? Sorry.
Cecilia Mockley, I believe.
Thank you, Cecilia. Can you mute yourself? Thank you.
I'll start again, Mr. Speaker. Residents of Frankwell and Porthill will welcome the report, item 10, into the proposed 20 miles per hour speed restriction at entrances to Shropshire schools, as our 2 local schools, St George's and Woodfield Infants, are not presently protected in this way. The report makes disturbing reading. There have been 19 recorded casualties outside Shropshire primary schools in the 3 years to March 2020, outside primary schools alone. Less than 3 million to give all Shropshire schools this protection. Why have residents waited 7 years since the measure was first adopted and an estimated 44 primary school children been injured, whilst this uncaring Conservative controlled council have failed to act? Thank you.
Thank you. Just before I bring in Councillor Davenport, can I remind members please to mute themselves? There was somebody then talking and there's also a lot of background noise, so please make sure you are muted unless you are asked to speak. Thank you.
Speaker Lesbian Wood is in attendance.
Thank you. Councillor Davenport.
Yes, hi, good morning. The council has limited staffing and financial resources available for highways improvements, with the government providing the council with only £1.6 million a year for all highway improvements annually. Therefore, necessarily, we need to focus on utilising these resources on where the most accidents can be prevented. Unfortunately, there have been many accident black spot clusters across the county, where accidents analysis clearly demonstrates that engineering intervention will reduce the number of the severity of accidents. Therefore, these have understandably had to take priority. Whilst any injury is obviously regrettable, particularly when they involve children, there have been no discreditable pattern that suggests a blanket rollout of 20 mile an hour zones in isolation would have prevented a significant number of accidents compared to those where resources have been invested. Whilst 11 accidents have been reported outside schools in the last 3 years, only 6 of these happened at times when pupils would be expected to be starting and finishing schools, i.e. 8 to 9 a.m. and 3 to 4 p.m. And of these, 2 involved already slow moving vehicles and 2 were parking was considered at a primary factor. In the school, in one school in the county, where a trend of accidents demonstrated that engineering measures would improve the risk. Would it improve the risk to children? Traffic calming has been put in place already. It is therefore, of course, appropriate that each school is considered on case-by-case basis to consider the most appropriate measures to improve safety of children in that vicinity. As today's report proposes such an approach and implement a blanket 20 mile an hour zone outside schools would therefore have diverted funds away from areas where lives and injuries have been saved in the last 7 years. However, as a number of these sites where accident clusters occur reduces in Of course, they're appropriate to look at new areas where we can consider more preemptive measures. And this is actually being brought by a Conservative councillor, Dan Morris, and we all will have received the report a bit later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 3.
Thank you, Speaker. This question is from Claire Kirby. In December last year, the Council agreed a climate change strategy framework with a draft timetable that included public consultation in spring 2020, adoption of a climate emergency strategy in summer 2020, and a climate action plan going live from summer 2020 onwards. Understandably, there have been some delays due to crises such as the flooding in February and then COVID. However, as the climate and ecological crisis accelerates, there are likely to be more such interruptions. What is the Council's revised timetable for the adoption of its climate emergency strategy and for the climate action plan going live? And how will the Council build resilience into this vital area of its work, ensuring that this work is properly resourced and able to continue despite the demands of any acute crises? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll.
Thank you. As I said previously, this council has adopted the principle outlined in the strategy framework of don't stop acting just because you're planning. Despite the challenges referred to, staff in the Climate Task Force have been able to continue work on a climate emergency strategy and action plan for consideration by elected members before the end of 2020, whilst also developing a range of specific projects to help reduce both the council's and the wider county's carbon footprints. The task force has now been made a permanent part of the council's staffing structure and has been provided with a specific budget. The task force continues to be actively supported by an internal officer group drawn from across the range of council services.
Thank you. Question 4.
Speaker, this question is from Joanna Blackman. Scientists have warned that we have only a few years left to transform our economies and avoid catastrophic climate change. Decisions made now as part of Shropshire's local plan will have ramifications for decades, locking in future emissions. The Council has a legal responsibility to ensure that these decisions are consistent with national and international commitments to limit emissions, as well as a responsibility to Shropshire residents to ensure that the local plan has the Council's own climate emergency strategy and action plan at its heart. However, the latter are not yet agreed. Will the Council therefore delay the agreement of the local plan until after its climate emergency strategy and action plan have been finalised? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Macy, if you'd like to respond.
Thank you, Speaker. The purpose of the local plan is to establish a positive framework for the delivery of sustainable development, incorporating the need to protect the environment, as well as supporting appropriate housing and commercial growth. Therefore, it's inherently a strategic document and should offer the opportunity through its policies to give consideration in decision making to other council strategies, including the emerging climate change strategy. The draft policy SP3 climate change of the draft local plan, which is currently subject to public consultation till the 30th of September, makes specific reference to the key ways in which new development will seek to support the transition towards a zero carbon economy, i.e. reducing carbon emissions, integrating on and off-site renewable and low carbon energy, maximising carbon capture and storage, and mitigating and adaptation measures. This was informed by the Climate Change Strategy Framework approved by Council on the 19th of December 2019, as well as the discussions with officers from the Council's Climate Change Task Force. It is anticipated that the draft climate strategy and action plan will be discussed by Cabinet later in 2020 and will be subject to an annual review.
Thank you. Finally, question 5.
This question is from Dr. Jamie Russell. Last year, Shropshire Council pledged to be net zero in its corporate activities by 2030 as part of its climate emergency declaration. The Council's pension scheme, which is administered by the Shropshire County Pension Fund, is part of this pledge. However, a recent Freedom of Information request to Shropshire Council revealed that the council does not know the carbon footprint of the 2 billion fund, nor how much CO2 would be saved if the Shropshire County Pension Fund agreed to divest as per the council's motion in July. The same FOI request revealed that the council also does not know what steps the fund needs to take in order for the council to meet its net zero pledge. At the last Pension Fund Committee meeting on Friday the 18th of September, a much anticipated climate risk report was received. However, this report was not released to the public. It is my understanding that the report only examines the risk that the climate crisis poses to the fund's profits. It does not assess the carbon footprint of the fund, nor the damage being done to the climate by the council's pension fund. When does the council expect to have a full estimate of the carbon footprint of its pension scheme by? And what steps need to be taken to ensure that the pension scheme doesn't prevent the council from keeping its net zero pledge? Thank you.
Councillor Nutting.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is Councillor Peter Nutting, and the response is the climate risk report was commissioned on behalf of Shropshire County Pension Fund at the Pensions Committee on the 18th of September, and this was the first opportunity to see and consider the report. The committee were disappointed that the detail of the report cannot be shared in public, but understands that this is due to intellectual property and data licensing restrictions of the third-party data and analytics contained in the report. In the section of the meeting, the issues raised in the report generated significant discussion and reflection and identified a number of areas of action. The recommendations in the report were all approved by the committee, and furthermore, a specific request was made and agreed to commission a similar report that could be made public. Upon reviewing the report, the committee agreed a timetable for actions, and this will be published in due course. Furthermore, the Pension Committee agreed to adopt the key recommendations within the report, which was to develop a climate strategy for the fund. This would be consistent with the TCFD recommendations and include a climate stewardship plan monitored regularly by the Pension Funds Committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Well, that concludes the public questions. We do have a petition though, and it's a petition bearing over 1,000 signatures, which has been received from Ms. Emma Dolphin, requesting the debate under the Council's petition scheme requesting the retention of the Clive statue in Shrewsbury Town Centre. The petitioner has not submitted a written statement. Now, I would say that the subject was extensively debated at the Council meeting in July. As such, I would ask Councillor Chalmers to update members on the action taken as a result of the previous debate. We'll then have a debate of up to 15 minutes maximum, but I request that members don't rehash what was a significant previous debate and only raise new pertinent points. The portfolio holder, Councillor Chalmers, will reply on behalf of the Council at the end of the debate. He will report which of the following options the Council should take. Now, there are a number of options which are available, which are take no action requested in the petition, hold an inquiry into the matter, undertake research into the matter, hold a public meeting, consult those affected, hold a meeting with the petitioners, refer the petition for consideration by the Council's Overview and Scrutiny Committee, call a referendum, write to the petition organiser setting out the Council's views about the request in the petition, or take no action for the reasons put forward in the debate. Okay, Councillor Chalmers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Councillor Steve Chalmers speaking. Yes, you're absolutely right, Mr. Speaker. We had an extensive debate at the last council meeting following the petition to remove the statue, and the consensus of opinion, or the way forward which was agreed, was that the statue would be staying in place, but an interpretation board would be placed somewhere near or on the statue. I'm pleased to report that we've now received a grant of just over £7,000 to provide an interpretation board there, and we will be intending to consult with local groups to agree a form of words to go on that board. this petition is obviously to retain the statue. I think we've already established that fact in the previous debate, so I won't go over old ground. But I'll just let anyone who wants to speak start the debate.
Okay. Well, I did have a previous notification that Councillor Brian Williams wished to say something. Brian, is that still the case?
Yes, indeed, Speaker. I want to congratulate the proposer on the success of a petition, which is very gratifying to those of us who feel that Clive should stay. I was unaware out in my rural patch of North Shropshire of the petition, but had people in my division been aware of it, I could have raised 100 signatures in a day in support of the petition. Such has been the sense of concern that there are those who seek to rewrite Shropshire and England's history. I can say also that so far as I'm aware, there's not a single member of the Conservative majority group on this council who wants the statue moved. Clive has stood on the square in Shrewsbury for many generations. It is the intention of the majority of this council that he should be there as part of Shropshire's history for generations to come. Colston has been toppled, roads may fall, but Clive shall onward stand. Thank you.
Thank you. I've had no other indication, councillors. No? Okay, we will move on then, please, to item 6.
Alan Mosley's just asked to speak.
Okay, we won't move on just yet. Councillor Alan Mosley has asked to speak. Alan.
I wasn't intending to speak until Councillor Williams spoke and did raise the issues that were discussed before. I think there was widespread agreement within the population, certainly was among certain members, that Clive has a tragic and disreputable history and a career that did great harm to the people of India and humanity as a whole. Can we put that on record, please, and dispute the way in which Councillor Williams lauded his legacy and his life. I am disappointed that more has not been done more quickly in terms of the interpretation boards, but was satisfied with what Councillor Chalmley said. I'd welcome his comments on who is going to determine the wording, the design and the general presentation of these interpretation boards. He did mention he would consult with organisations. Could he please tell us what are those organisations and how the consultations are going to be held?
Thank you. Well, I'm going to ask Councillor Chalmley then now to come back. Now there's been some debate to fill us in and also report what option he will be taking. Councillor Chalmley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, in answer to Councillor Mosley's question, I think it's too soon to say who is going to be involved, but local interest groups within the Shrewsbury area would be appropriate, I should imagine. And the consultation will be an informal consultation rather than a full-on council consultation, but a range of local heritage and conservation groups would be appropriate in my view. Just on going back to the petition, I would also like to thank the petitioner for their efforts, but on this occasion I would recommend that we take no further action due to the course of action already being defined.
Thank you. Okay, we will now move on to item 6, which is the appointment of the Chief Executive. I'm going to ask the interim Chief Executive, Andy Begley, perhaps just to step out of the room while we debate this. We don't want him to know how highly he's thought of or otherwise, so. Okay, I'm going to invite the Leader of the Council, Councillor Peter Nutting, to present the report, move the report and the recommendations be received and agreed.
Thank you, Speaker. It's Councillor Peter Nutting. The recommendation is very simple. It is that the Council confirm the permanent appointment to the Chief Executive position to Andy Begley with effect from the 1st of October 2020. I should comment that on page 2 there are some dates in the report that are wrong. They should say August, not September, just so everybody's clear. From my perspective, I am really pleased with this appointment, and I do wish Andy Begley a warm welcome to this new role. I'm sure he's going to do a brilliant job in helping move this council forward, and I really am pleased with the appointment. So I can't speak too highly of him. I'm glad he's outside the room when I'm saying all this, but he knows I think highly of him, and I'm sure he's going to be a great success. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Is it seconded?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, Councillor Steve Chalmers happy to second this motion, and I echo what the leader has said regarding the interim chief executive.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's open up for debate. Councillor Shanton.
Thank you, Speaker. I too welcome this appointment. As Vice Chair of Health Overview and Scrutiny, I've had occasion to work with Mr. Begley on a number of occasions, and what I've welcomed is his succinct, brief, to the point grasp of situations and a way round to make things better for patients and their carers. So for me, he has his feet on the ground, he has a total grasp of this county, and it's great need at the moment when it comes to people. So welcome, Andy Begley. If I can help, and if the independent group can help in any way, we will.
Thank you. I've got nobody else indicating, so I'm now going to accept the recommendation of this report unless anyone else indicates differently. No? I think we can just let Claire get him back in. Thank you. Claire, if you could just confirm the outcome.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, the outcome is clearly everybody supports this appointment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, councillors. Congratulations. No longer interim.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 7, the annual Treasury report for 2019-20. I invite Councillor Minery, the portfolio holder for finance and corporate support, to present the report and move the recommendation to be received and agreed. Councillor Minery.
Yes, thank you, Speaker. Morning, it's Councillor David Minery here. Members will be familiar with the purpose of this report. Not only do we have an annual one, we also have quarterly ones. But in the event that there is anybody listening in who is not aware of what this is about, I'll just briefly try and set out some context for it before I move the recommendations. Most organisations, most businesses have what we in the trade would call a fairly flat profile. In other words, their income and their expenditure are pretty much evenly matched throughout the year, and it's a fairly simple task, therefore, to manage the money. Unfortunately, Shropshire Council is not in that position. Shropshire Council handles somewhere in the region of, in this current year, £600 million a year. But it is, whilst that money may flow out fairly evenly, it certainly doesn't come in fairly evenly. And there are times of the year when we find ourselves awash with cash. It would be very tempting to think we could use that for something else, but we can't, because later in the year we're going to need it. So we do have a treasury management scheme. We have a treasury management team, and they work with some external advisors, and they invest the money that is calculated to be spare as we go through the year. Their performance is always exceptional, and this last year has been no change to that. They have yet again performed better than they were targeted with. They perform better than the family group of councils that they are compared against. So it has yet again been a success story. I think we all wish that we could generate even more from the spare cash, but unfortunately, as everybody is aware, financial markets are very, very flat at the moment. The bank rate is 0.1%. There are some parts actually where it's gone into negative. and people are having to pay banks just to keep their money. Hope we never get into that situation, but it is potentially on the horizon. But that's looking forward. This report is looking back, and as I say, it is an excellent result yet again by the team, and I do record my thanks and appreciation for them. And I move the recommendation. Thank you.
I second the recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Do you withhold your right, or do you wish to speak now?
No, I'll withhold my right. Thank you, Speaker.
Okay, Councillor Roger Evans has indicated he wishes to speak. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Speaker. I note what was said by the proposer, and I also note the various figures listed in the report. I congratulate all the Treasury team on their performance to outperform the benchmark that this Conservative administration set them. Can we be told what was the benchmark set by the administration? How much in actual cash terms was earned by our excellent Treasury team acting within the policy put forward by the administration? Finally, does the Cabinet member consider that this amount of cash that has been generated provide the best use of the huge capital reserves this council holds? Thank you, Speaker.
Anybody else wishing to speak before I come back to the seconder? No, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Speaker. Can I say that the benchmark is not set by this council? The benchmark is an external benchmark. We're not trying to outperform something we've set very low for ourselves. We are performing a fully recognised external benchmark, and the success of this is plainly seen in paragraph 11.7 on page 10 of the report, which shows not only that this year, but for 3 years past, we have outperformed the benchmark. And that is clearly a situation which, as we would all agree, is very satisfactory. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Miller, you have the right of reply.
Yes, thank you, Speaker. I mean, Councillor Williams, and thank you, Brian, has already dealt with the first half of the question. So I will deal with is it my opinion that this is the best use of the sometimes significant cash balances that we have? And I understand where the questioner is coming from, because repeatedly in the past, he or one of his colleagues has tried to make the point that we ought to be investing some of this cash in projects. And whilst I have some sympathy with that view, it is simply not practical. I did try in my introduction to explain that there are significant fluctuations in demands on cash as we go through the year. And if we were to take a substantial amount of money that's sitting in the bank at any one point in time, invest it in a capital project, then we run a severe risk that at the end of the year, we won't have any money in the bank to pay for the bills as they fall due. So the simple answer to his question is yes, I am satisfied that this is best use of the spare cash. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, there is a recommendation, one of really, I guess, noting this report. So I don't propose to take a vote on it unless somebody indicates differently. No? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item 8 then, the annual assurance report of the Audit Committee to the Council. I invite Councillor Adams, the Chairman of the Audit Committee, to present the report and move the report and the recommendations be received and agreed. Councillor Adams.
Thank you. Thank you, Speaker. Councillor Adams, I wish to propose that the Council accepts the annual assurance report of the Audit Committee 2019 to 20, but only recommendation 2.2. Recommendation 2.1 is now redundant. This report assures the Council of the effectiveness and adequacy of the Council's governance, risk management and internal control frameworks. The work is carried out by the Audit Department in conjunction with our team of external auditors who attend all meetings and give significant help and advice to Shropshire Council. The aim of the committee is, through its works, to help the council achieve its corporate goals. Securing proper governance helps council increase its productivity and to lower its costs. I can now confirm to council that reasonable arrangements are in place to assess performance. A system for improvement or change is in place. A value for money system exists which can cut waste, fraud and improve the use of assets. And an effective risk assessment system, both strategic and operational, exists and is used vigorously. A total of 786 recommendations were made last year in 72 reports. But the head of audit has issued a limited assurance note this year. The reason for the limited assurance is concerned with some weaknesses appearing in our systems, mainly 4 fundamental weaknesses, which the largest of which was the Highways Department. So the reports into these things find a problem has been identified, and evidence-based examination has taken place. A report is then presented to management with recommendations or an action plan and time limitations. Appropriate action is undertaken with a completion date. But just to be clear, the judgment of a fundamental weakness remains despite anecdotal evidence of improvement. The judgment is only changed if the evidence of the follow-up audit shows that the necessary improvements have been made. Another thing that came to fruition last year was the whistleblowing policy. This has been in existence for some years, but in the last 2 years, the number of references via the whistleblowing system has more than doubled. Each report is examined again to find the necessary evidence, and we are looking at issues that could harm the council or harm an individual. Because of the rise in the number of requests via the system, which is basically allows the whistleblower anonymity and a guarantee that his complaint will be looked at, because of the extra pressure there, the policy itself is now being looked at to see if it can be refined to help keep up with demand, so that whistleblowers in their increasing numbers continue to get full support. Another thing that is coming forward is the value for money aspect. One aim of the audit proceedings is to improve the procedures that run the council, and further examine, try to find work where we can add value to the work of the necessary department. A previous report to the audit committee of the 17th of September this year, report 8, you'll find a list of these value for money add-ons on page 40.
Peter, can I just say you've had 5 minutes now,
Right,
so if you could wind up, that would be good.
I was just going to say that they are the 3 things I wish to bring to council's notice, and I hope council will support the recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You're welcome. Thank you. Is that seconded?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I second the report, and I will speak now. I want to let council be aware of the effect of the coronavirus on the function of the audit committee. when we look at this report, on para 13 on page 23 really spells it out. The problem of the virus only affected effectively the last month of the financial year in question. But even then, it made it difficult, or has made it difficult, for the audit to be able to provide the strength of assurance that we would have wished. When you think that the virus is now ongoing and is likely to be so for the whole of this financial year, with officers moved from many of their normal activities to deal with virus problems, it shows how difficult it is for the audit committee and the audit service to be able to get from managers the assurances that they would wish to, so that the council can be satisfied that all its procedures are being satisfactorily carried out. This is a very difficult year for the council's audit service, and I would like to pay tribute to the way that Kerry Pilowski, our head of audit, and her very small team, there are only really 5 senior auditors in the team, are able to do as much as they can to provide this council with the assurance that all its functions are being carried out satisfactorily. We live in difficult times due to the virus. Audit is always a function which by many officers is not particularly welcome, because it takes time to provide the relevant satisfactory assurances. And in this time of coronavirus, many of them may well feel that they would wish to be concentrating on the activities that they are involved in combating the problems of corona. So this year is going to be difficult, and there is no doubt that last year, the year in question, we have done as much as we can as an audit committee and an audit service to provide a high level of assurance to the council, and we shall hope to carry on this year to be certain that the council is satisfactorily functioning in terms of financial the financial consequences. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Okay, I've got 2 people thus far who have indicated to speak. Councillor Roger Evans, then Councillor Nigel Hartin. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the chairman, committee, and all the officers on the audit, because they, as has just been said by the seconder, they work in a difficult area of the council, and difficulties this year are even more than previous year. We're looking at the 2019-20 year, which largely is pre-COVID. So I do congratulate the report, and I congratulate the chairman on his statement within the report. I note that on the recommendations, it says council asked to consider and comment on the contents of the report. We support it, but I would ask that some of the words in item 13 actually be included from this council, not as a criticism, but just to note that the head of audit offers limited assurance to the 2019-20 year on the council's framework for governance and management and internal control. There are increased number of high and medium risk rated weaknesses identified in key individual assignments that are significant in aggregate. Full stop. I think it would be useful for this council to put it in to say, yes, we recognise, congratulate all involved with it, but it does note that this statement does appear in the report. And I would like that to be included as recommendation too, Chairman. Hopefully it can be supported. It's no criticism of anybody. It's just the council takes note of what is in the report from the audit committee for the 2019-20 year. Thank you, Chairman. Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Hartin.
Yes, thank you, Speaker. Very interested to hear what Councillor Peter Adams mentioned in relation to the whistleblowing policy. And I hear what you say about the significant increase that there have been in those sort of complaints coming forward to the council. I would be interested, though, in some further, perhaps, clarification from him in respect to the potential changes in policy that might be being considered in order to try and deal with the increased workload. On the one hand, of course, if that change of policy means that it makes it easier for a limited number of staff to deal with the complaints, that is one thing. I would be rather concerned if any changes of policy made it more difficult for whistleblowers to bring forward issues in the way that they are at the moment. So I appreciate some clarity, if I can, possibly, Speaker, from the chair.
Thank you. Councillor David Vasmer has indicated a wish to speak. Councillor Vasmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just like to back Councillor Roger Evans's call for a change to the recommendation. But also, I mean, my concern is that this report doesn't really indicate the seriousness of the situation as far as the limited assurance has been given by the head of audit. And particularly, I note in 12, paragraph 12 of the report, the Audit Committee resolved there's reasonable arrangements for corporate government. Well, I don't think there are reasonable arrangements. It's clear the head of audit is not happy. And also, Councillor Williams said that the committee requiring a high level of insurance. I don't think that's the case. And I think that this report, this recommendation needs to be amended. Also, I think that Councillor Adams mentioned quite a number of important issues in his address, and I think it would be a shame that some of those couldn't have been included in the report. And I'd certainly like to see a copy of his speech if he has that. Thank you.
Leader of Council, Councillor Peter Nutting has indicated his wish to speak. Councillor Nutting.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm a little concerned that this should be amended. I don't think there's any need to amend this at all. Everything is included in the report. It's a public document, and I really think the Liberals are just playing around, playing politics with the audit system of the council, which works extremely well, is well praised, and I really think they're making hard work of something they don't need to do. So I would oppose the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Nutting. Councillor Hannah Fraser has indicated to speak. I think you will need to indicate whether you are proposing an amendment to this or just asking if the wording could be changed. But think about that, please. Councillor Hannah Fraser.
Thank you, Speaker. Rather than
Hannah, we seem to have lost you. Councillor Fraser? You have disappeared.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can now. We seem to have had some sort of glitch here with everything.
Sorry, the mobile phone company have been doing improvements which have made everything worse over the last 2 weeks.
That's fairly standard.
Yeah, absolutely. So rather than talking about the sort of function of audit, I'm concerned to hear that whistleblowing is massively on the rise in the council, and that we now have this limited assurance, both of which I think are serious concerns. And I would like to hear from the leader and the chief executive as to why standards audit is supposed to reflect the standards and governance within the council. And what we've heard suggests that these are slipping. So I'd like to hear from the leader and the chief executive as to what is being done in response to this, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you can hear from the leader, but it wouldn't be proper to get the chief executive to comment in a council meeting. Councillor Nutting, did you wish to say anything more?
Not really. I will look.
If not, I'll go back to the seconder and the proposer.
Yeah, if I can say, Speaker, I've already spoken on the item, so I shouldn't speak again. I will look into the matters raised.
Thank you very much. Back to the proposer.
Unless, Mr. Speaker, it was very unclear. Is Councillor Roger Evans proposing an amendment?
Well, I did pose that question. I assume as nobody responded that they weren't proposing an amendment, just making a suggestion. Councillor Evans, were you actually proposing an amendment, or?
I would have liked to, Chairman, but I take the point about the audit, and council should be united on it. So I will support what is said, especially the words said by the chairman. So in this instance, I will not push for a vote, but I would like it to be taken into consideration that those words by the head of audit do need to be considered, and this council does take note of what is in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I've had one more councillor who has indicated to speak, Councillor Joyce Barrow. I'm then going to go back. I think we'll have essentially everybody's saying that they've done an excellent job and done really, really well. So I would hate for this to be the longest debate of the day. Councillor Barrow.
Thank you, Chair. I think there should be a role of the scrutiny involved in a change in whistleblowing policy. Scrutiny is meant to look at all these different policies. So I hope somebody would bear that in mind, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Councillor Peter Adams, who's the chair. Councillor Adams, is there anything you wish to say?
Councillor Adams, Chair of Audit. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Roger. I was going to say that, as far as I'm concerned, when you accept the recommendation here, you accept the whole of the report, which will include the sentences that you highlighted. So I don't think we need to put it in separately. It is there for anyone to look at their convenience. On the question of whistleblowing, Nigel asked a pertinent question as to what the policy is going to be. It won't be a new policy. With the increase in usage, we need to make sure that the whistleblowers get through, that their query or problem is expressed clearly, their anonymity is respected, and that we can deal with the increased number of instances fairly slickly, so that they get through. The report with the recommendations, if necessary, is published, and the necessary action, if there is action required, is taken. So it is basically to improve the system and make sure that whistleblowers are treated as fairly as they are now. The increased and the policy needs to be refined, because as far as I'm concerned, the increase in the number of whistleblowers is a good sign, in that the system is being recognised throughout the council. It is come of age, and employees of the council have some confidence that their worries will be looked at. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I propose the report as amended, the recommendations as amended.
Thank you very much. And obviously everybody has had a chance, if they wish to speak on this. What I'd like to do is to accept the recommendations of the report, unless anyone indicates differently. So that is in effect replacing the online vote, but we are actually voting to say that we agree with it. So unless anybody says anything different, we will move on. So is everybody content for me to accept the recommendation? All right, there's no dissent, so we will assume then, therefore, that the whole council is content to accept that. Thank you.